Facts, they no longer matter to the left. Truth doesn't matter. Reason, common sense doesn't matter. It's all Trump derangement syndrome every second hour of every 24-hour day, and the levels are shocking and disturbing.
But first, this breaking news and my take. It is unlikely that we will get a John Durham interim report or any indictments before the election. Now just 37 days away, a debate has begun within the Department of Justice as the timing of John Durham's criminal investigation conclusions. I'm being told by sources it is now too close to the election and could be viewed as politically motivated. However, I can confirm Durham's investigation is significant and it is expanding. Reports Friday that Durham has expanded the scope of his investigation to include the Clinton Foundation donations while Clinton was sitting Secretary of State. The same group, remember, at the FBI was leading these two investigations. It was led by former FBI agent Peter Strzok. He was overseeing both investigations, one into the Clinton use of an unsecure server and one into Donald Trump's alleged collusion. They were treated extremely differently, even though there was no evidence found of wrongdoing for Trump and gross negligence found in Clinton's handling of her unsecured server. Again, I believe, based on my conversations with sources, it is unlikely you will hear any conclusions by John Durham by November 3rd. I asked AG Barr about the timing of this investigation earlier this year.
So that has been surprising to me, that people aren't concerned about civil liberties and the integrity of our governmental process. In terms of the future of Durham's investigation, he's pressing ahead as hard as he can, and I expect that, we will have suds hopefully before the end of the summer. But as I said, his investigation will continue. It's not going to stop because of the election. What happens after the election may depend on who wins the election.
Remember Obama when he said, and by the way, Obama knew all about the scam. He knew all about this coup. He knew all about spying on my campaign. He knew everything. Somebody said, well, we can't go. They have him go. They have him go. Remember I said they were spying on my campaign a long time ago. The internet blew up. How dare he say that? How dare it turned out to be true? And then it was the coup because I got in. Now they said, all right, he got in. We couldn't stop him. Now we're going to try taking it away. Can you believe it? This is the USA. No, seriously, can you believe it? And we caught him. All these text messages. And from what I hear, they have some real beauties coming out over the next couple of days. So stay tuned. But somebody said, oh, you can't do that. He was president. Well, I'm president, too, and they would not stop, I promise. These people are sick. They're bad people.
Joining me right now to discuss this and the upcoming Supreme Court vote is the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Lindsey Graham. Mr. Chairman, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for being here and the election.
Well, I don't know. I've never talked to Mr. Durham. I think he's a very capable, fair-minded prosecutor. But every time you look under one rock, you find something new. We've found in the last 2 or 3 days that the Russian subsource was actually suspected by the FBI of being a Russian spy all the way back to 2009. They never told the FISA court that. I'll be shocked if nobody's charged with a crime at the FBI or the Department of Justice for misleading the FISA court. The FISA application given to the FISA court completely misrepresented the subsource, who he was and what he said, and all the exculpatory information collected was never given to the court. That's a breach of duty by DOJ and the FBI to the court. So I'll be shocked if nobody is not charged with some kind of crime in defrauding the court, but that's up to Mr. Durham.
All right, I want to get back to this. I want to ask you about your upcoming testimony that you're going to be getting from Jim Comey on Wednesday, and also what else is in the books. All right, let me move on to your upcoming testimony that you're going to get from Jim Comey. You're going to hear from Comey in a public hearing on Wednesday. Look, I've got to ask you right out, Senator, is this, I mean, look, he can just in a public hearing say, I can't talk about that. That's confidential. That's classified. So, I mean, sometimes I look at public hearings and say, this is just a sham. I mean, is it?
Yeah.
Are you really going to solicit information from Jim Comey Wednesday?
Well, he can't say that something's classified when it's been declassified. The information we received from Barr and Christopher Wray, and Attorney General Barr and Director Wray have been very helpful to me to get information out of the system. Durham had the first look at the fact that the primary subsource was suspected by the FBI of being a Russian agent. Yeah, I'm going to ask Jim Comey, did you know that the man who put the dossier together for Christopher Steele was a suspected Russian spy on the payroll of the Democratic Party? If you knew that, why didn't you tell the court? Did you know that the Russian subsource was interviewed by your own agents in January and March of 2017, and he disavowed the dossier as being reliable, bar talk and hearsay? And if you knew that, why didn't you tell the court? Because in April of 2017, you signed a warrant where none of this was in there. I'm going to ask him that, and I don't know, there's nothing classified about that. That's in the Hurwitz report.
There is also breaking news in terms of who else you got to agree to come speak with you.
Yeah.
Tell me who else you're expecting.
The number 2, McCabe, is coming on October the 6th. I'm very glad he is. I'm negotiating with Strzok. I want to bring in Mr. Barnett, the man who said that there was no there in the Flynn case. Mr. Barnett was the agent in charge of investigating General Flynn for any suspected ties to Russia. On January the 4th, he did a memo wanting to close out the case, saying they found no evidence that General Flynn was working with the Russians in any fashion. It was January 5th meeting in the White House where they kept the case going. And what did Mr. Barnett say? That it seems to me they were out to get Trump, that there was no there. They kept pushing the Flynn case in spite of the evidence. What's the pattern here? Every time there was exculpatory evidence regarding the Carter Page warrant, they hid it or they altered it. They never told the court that the dossier wasn't reliable. They knew it wasn't reliable. They kept using it. They weren't searching for the truth. They were trying to get an outcome. When you look at what Mr. Barnett says and the way they defrauded the FISA court, you get a clear picture that these people are on a mission to go after Trump, not to find the truth.
These people are sick.
I think it's clear as day, and the mainstream media is ignoring this. Can you imagine if the shoe were on the other foot, that if the Republicans had done this? So, Maria, there's a day of reckoning coming. Just stay tuned. And there's more coming.
Okay.
There's something else coming, more damning than this, believe it or not.
So you are waiting for a further declassification of evidence this upcoming week that is, in fact, more damning than what we're talking about this morning.
Well, all I can say is that so what have we learned? Everything Russia-Trump was looked at. You had $25 million, 60 agents, you had subpoenas, you had people's lives turned upside down. The question is, did they look at Russia coming after Trump? We've got a Russian spy on the payroll of the Democratic Party putting together a document that he tells the FBI is not reliable, and the FBI uses it 4 times to get a warrant against an American citizen, a member of the Trump team. What accounts for that? There's got to be, it's clear to anybody who's looking, they wouldn't take no for an answer when it came to Trump. They were out to get the man.
All right, so you are questioning whether or not the Mueller investigation was appropriate as well. You are also looking at the fraud against the FISA court, perhaps even worse than we know. And you say that the Flynn case is also questionable based on what we know today. Even though we are likely not getting anything from John Durham before Election Day, you believe you'll have more declassifications to educate the public on what went down in 2016, Senator?
Yeah, stay tuned. So there's 3 buckets here. Was there any legitimate reason for Mueller to be investigating the Trump team for a crime regarding Russia? In 2017, there was no evidence that anybody on the Trump campaign was working with the Russians. The FISA abuse is another lane that we're all looking at. The court was misled, lied to. The FBI lied its ass off to the FISA court, hope somebody goes to jail and gets fired. And the third bucket is the Flynn case. They screwed General Flynn. There was no there, and the top leadership of DOJ and the FBI kept pushing, and now you got an agent in Barnett in charge of the case, a frontline agent saying this was wrong.
Thank you.
With that exhausting and chaotic first debate last night between President Trump and Joe Biden. For much of the night, Biden could barely finish a thought. The president interrupted him at least 73 times. At one point, the former vice president told Mr. Trump to, quote, shut up.
But first, Mr. President, as you well know, there's a new report that in 2016, the year you were elected president, and 2017, your first year as president, that you paid $750 a year in federal income tax each of those years. I know that you pay a lot of other taxes, but I'm asking you the specific question. Is it true that you paid $750 in federal income taxes each of those 2 years?
I paid millions of dollars in taxes, millions of dollars of income tax. And let me just tell you, there was a story in one of the papers that I paid $38 million 1 year. I paid $27 million. Show us your tax returns. I went, you'll see it as soon as it's finished. You'll see it. You know, if you want to do, go to the Board of Elections. There's a 118-page or so report that says everything I have, every bank I have, I'm totally under-leveraged because the assets are extremely good, and we have I built a great company.
I'm asking you a specific question, which is...
Let me tell you.
I understand all of that. I understand all of that. No, Mr. President, I'm asking you a question. Will you tell us how much you paid in federal income taxes in 2016 and 2017?
Millions of dollars.
You paid millions of dollars?
Millions of dollars.
So
yes.
not 750.
Millions of dollars, and you'll get to see it. And you'll get to see it. But let me just tell you, Chris, let me just tell you something, that it was the tax laws. I don't want to pay tax. Before I came here, I was a private developer. I was a private business people. Like every other private person, unless they're stupid, they go through the laws, and that's what it is. He passed a tax bill that gave us all these privileges for depreciation and for tax credits. We built a building and we get tax credits, like the hotel on Pennsylvania Avenue. You get a massive, which, by the way, was given to me by the Obama administration, if you can believe that.
These people are sick.
Mr. Vice President, if Senate Republicans, we were talking originally about the Supreme Court here, if Senate Republicans go ahead and confirm Justice Barrett, there has been talk about ending the filibuster or even packing the court, adding to the 9 justices there. You call this a distraction by the president, but in fact it wasn't brought up by the president. It was brought up by some of your Democratic colleagues in the Congress. So my question to you is, you have refused in the past to talk about it. Are you willing to tell the American people tonight whether or not you will support either ending the filibuster or packing the court?
Whatever position I take on that, that'll become the issue. The issue is the American people should speak. You should go out and vote. You're in voting now. Vote and let your senators know how strongly you feel. Vote now. Make sure you, in fact, let people know your senator. I'm not going to answer the question.
Why would you answer that question?
The question is,
radical left. Will you shut up, man? Listen, who is on your list, Joe? Who's on your list?
Gentlemen, I think
this is so unprecedented. We
have ended this segment. We're going to move on to the second segment.
That was really a productive segment, wasn't it? Keep yapping, man.
The people understand, Joe. 47 years, you've got nothing. They understand.
All right. Is it fair to say he blew it when, in fact, when there was record low unemployment before COVID?
Yeah, but because what he did, even before COVID, manufacturing went in the hole. Manufacturing went in the hole.
Excuse me, Chris. Wait.
Number two.
Chris.
Number three.
They said it would take... No, you were number two.
No.
Chris. They said it would take a miracle to bring back manufacturing.
You know, when Joe Biden was vice president, America actually lost 200,000 manufacturing jobs. And the last president said about this time 4 years ago, remember? He essentially told the American people those manufacturing jobs were never coming back. Right? Remember, he asked that famous question, what magic wand do you have?
And when somebody says, like the person you just mentioned, who I'm not going to advertise for, that he's going to bring all these jobs back. Well, how exactly are you going to do that? What are you going to do? There's no answer to it. He just says, well, I'm going to negotiate a better deal. Well, how exactly are you going to negotiate that? What magic wand do you have? And usually the answer is, he doesn't have an answer.
Well, we didn't need a magic wand. We just needed President Donald Trump in the White House. 500,000 manufacturing jobs created in just 3 years.
I brought back 700,000 jobs. They brought back nothing. They gave up on manufacturing. My standard fare.
I'm the guy that brought back the automobile industry. We brought back, I was asked to bring back Chrysler and General Motors. We brought them back right here in the state of Ohio and Michigan. He blew it. They're gone. He blew it. And in fact, they're going.
Ohio had the best year it's ever had last year. Michigan had the best year they've ever had.
That is not
Many
true.
car companies came in from Germany, from Japan, went to Michigan, went to Ohio.
They're not having
and they didn't come in with you.
Mr. Vice President.
Manufacturing went in a hole.
Excuse me, Chris. Wait.
Number two.
Chris.
Number three.
They said it would take... No, you were number two.
No. What the plan is, you've got to provide these businesses the ability to have the money to be able to reopen with the PPE as well as with the sanitation they need. You have to provide them
Nancy Pelosi.
Well, he's just shush for a minute.
Tell it to Nancy Pelosi and Schumer.
By the way, Nancy Pelosi and Schumer, they have a plan. He won't even meet with them. The Republicans won't meet with the Senate. And he sits in his golf course. And, well, I mean, literally, think about it.
You probably play more than I do, Joe.
What about this question of reopenings and the fact that...
he wants to shut down this country. And I want to keep it open. And we did a great thing by shutting it down. Wait a minute, Joe. Let me shut you down for a second, Joe, just for 1 second. He wants to shut down the country. We just went through it. We had to because we didn't know anything about the disease. Now we found that elderly people with heart problems and diabetes and different problems are very, very vulnerable. We learned a lot. Young children aren't. Even younger people aren't. We've learned a lot. But he wants to shut it down. More people will be hurt by continuing. If you look at Pennsylvania, if you look at certain states that have been shut down, they have Democrat governors all. And one of the reasons they're shut down is because they want to keep it shut down until after the election. November 3rd. Because it's a political. But those states are not doing well that are shut down right now.
You have begun to increasingly question the effectiveness of masks as a disease preventer, and in fact recently you have cited the issue of waiters touching their masks and touching plates. Are you questioning
I think the masks are okay. You have to understand, if you look, I mean, I have a mask right here. I put a mask on it, when I think I need it. Tonight, as an example, everybody's had a test, and you've had social distancing and all of the things that you have to. But I wear masks when needed. When needed, I wear masks.
Okay, let me ask.
I don't wear masks like him. Every time you see him, he's got a mask. He could be speaking 200 feet away from me. He shows up with the biggest mask I've ever seen. I'm okay with masks.
I want to ask you both about one last subject, because your different approaches has even affected the way that you have campaigned. President Trump, you're holding large rallies with crowds packed together, thousands of people. Outside, yes, sir, agreed. Vice President Biden, you are holding much smaller events with
nobody will show up.
People with
What's true? Nobody shows up to his rallies.
All right. In any case, why you holding the big rallies? Why you not? You go first, sir.
Because people want to hear what I have to say. I mean,
but are you not worried about
a great job as a president, and I'll have 25, 35,000 people show up at airports. We use airports.
Are you not worried about
we have a lot of people?
Sir?
Well, so far, we have had no problem whatsoever. It's outside. That's a big difference, according to the experts. And we do them outside. We have tremendous crowds, as you see. I mean, and literally on 24 hours notice. And Joe does the circles and has 3 people someplace.
Okay. By the way, did you one of the last big rallies he had, and a reporter came up to him to ask him a question. He said, no, stand back. Put on your mask. Put on a mask. Have you been tested? I'm way far away from those other people. And that's what he said. I can't. I'm going to be okay. He's not worried about you. He's not worried about the people out there breathing one another.
We've had no negative effect.
No negative effect.
We've had no negative effect. And we've had 35, 40,000 people at these rallies.
Just quickly finish up, because I want to move on to our next.
Yes, I would. He's been totally irresponsible the way in which he has handled the social distancing and people wearing masks. Basically encouraged them not to.
All right.
He's a fool on this.
If you could get the crowds, you would have done the same thing. But you can't. Nobody cares.
Gentlemen, can we...
You have no messages.
Nobody loves you.
This is a president who has used everything as a dog whistle to try to generate racist hatred, racist division. This is a man who, in fact, you talk about helping African Americans. 1 in 1,000 African Americans has been killed because of the coronavirus. And if he doesn't do something quickly, by the end of the year, 1 in 500 will have been killed. 1 in 500 African Americans. This man is the savior of African Americans. This man cares at all. This man's done virtually nothing. Look, the fact is that you have to look at what he talks about. You have to look at what he did. And what he did has been disastrous for the African American community. This guy and his friends look down on so many people. They look down their nose on people like Irish Catholics like me and grow up in Scranton. They look down on people who don't have money. They look down on people who are of a different faith. They look down on people who are a different color. In fact, we're all Americans. The only way we're going to bring this country together is bring everybody together. There's nothing we cannot do if we do it together. We can take this on and we can defeat racism in America.
President Trump, you have 2 minutes. Why should Americans trust you over your opponent to deal with racism?
He did a crime bill, 1994. where you call them super predators, African Americans, super predators, and they've never forgotten it. They've never forgotten it, Joe.
No, sir, it's his 2 minutes.
So you did that, and they call you a super predator, and I'm letting people out of jail now that you have treated the African American population community, you have treated the black community about as bad as anybody in this country. You did the and that's why, if you look at the polls, I'm doing better than any Republican has done in a long time, because they saw what you did. You call them super predators, and you've called them worse than that, because you look back at your testimony over the years, you've called them a lot worse than that. As far as the church is concerned, and as far as the generals are concerned, we just got the support of 250 military leaders and generals, total support. Law enforcement, almost every law enforcement group in the United States. I have Florida, I have Texas, I have Ohio, I have Portland. The sheriff just came out today and he said, I support President Trump. I don't think you have any law enforcement. You can't even say the word law enforcement, because if you say those words, you're going to lose all of your radical left supporters. And why aren't you saying those words, Joe? Why don't you say the words law enforcement? Because you know what? If they called us in Portland, we would put out that fire in a half an hour, but they won't do it because they're run by radical left Democrats. If you look at Chicago, if you look at any place you want to look, Seattle, they heard we were coming in the following day and they put up their hands and we got back Seattle. Minneapolis, we got it back, Joe, because we believe in law and order, but you don't. The top 10 cities and just about the top 40 cities are run by Democrats and in many cases radical left, and they've got you wrapped around their finger, Joe, to a point where you don't want to say anything about law and order. And I'll tell you what, the people of this country want and demand law and order, and you're afraid to even say it.
All right.
How dare you?
Shame on you.
We want to talk about this issue of law and order, though, and in the joint recommendation that came from the Biden-Bernie Sanders task force, you talked about, quote, reimagining policing. First of all, what does reimagining policing mean, and do you support?
It means...
let me, if I might finish the question, what does reimagining policing mean, and do you support the Black Lives Matter call for community control of policing?
Look, what I support is the police having the opportunity to deal with the problems they face. And I'm totally opposed to defunding the police officers. As a matter of fact, local police, the only one defunding it, his budget calls for a $400 million cut in local law enforcement assistance. They need more assistance. They need, when they show up for a 9/11 call, to have someone with them as a psychologist or psychiatrist to keep them from having to use force and be able to talk people down. We have to have community policing like we had before, where the officers get to know the people in the communities. That's when crime went down. It didn't go up, it went down. And so we have to be engaged.
That's not what they're talking about, Chris. That's not what they're talking about. He's talking about defunding the police.
That is not true.
He doesn't have any law. He has no law enforcement.
That's not true.
Almost nothing. All right, who do you have? Name one group that supports you. Name one group that came out and supported you. Go ahead. Think. We have time.
We don't have time to do anything.
All right. Name one law enforcement group that came out and supported.
Gentlemen, I think I'm going to take back the moderator's role, and I want to get to another subject.
All right, Chuck. Thank you very much.
All right. It's Chris, but anyway.
I just did Chris.
Yeah.
You have repeatedly criticized the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing extremist groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland? Are you prepared to specifically
do it? I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace.
Then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it. You want to call them? What do you want to call them? Give me a name. Give me a
white
name.
Supremacists and right supremacists and right
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem. This is a left-wing. This is a left-wing problem.
White supremacists. Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you got it.
Not militia. That's what his FBI director said.
Well, you know what?
No, we're done, sir. We're moving on to the next. We're moving.
That hits you over the head. That's not an idea.
Everybody in your administration tells you the truth has a bad idea.
Can I tell you what?
You have no idea.
Antifa is a dangerous,
all right,
radical
gentlemen, we're now moving on to the Trump and Biden records.
And with regard to more divided, the nation, it can't stay divided. We can't be this way. And speaking of my son, the way you talk about the military, the way you talk about them being losers and being and just being suckers. My son was in Iraq. He spent a year there. He got the Bronze Star. He got the Conspicuous Service Medal. He was not a loser. He was a patriot, and the people left behind there were heroes.
Really?
And I resent.
Are you talking about Hunter? Are you talking about Hunter?
I'm talking about my son, Bo Biden. You're talking about.
I don't know Bo. I know Hunter. Hunter got thrown out of the military. He was thrown out, dishonorably discharged.
That's not true. It wasn't dishonorably.
Cocaine use. And he didn't have a job until you became vice president. Once you became vice president, he made a fortune in Ukraine, in China, in Moscow,
that is simply
and various
not
other places.
True.
He made a fortune.
My son.
And he didn't have a job.
My son, like a lot of people we know at home, had a drug problem. He's overtaken it. He's fixed it. He's worked on it. And I'm proud of him.
But why was he given tens of millions of dollars?
But he wasn't given tens of millions of dollars. That is totally discredited.
We've already been
discredited.
We've already been through this. I think the American people would rather hear about more substantial subjects. Well, you know, as the moderator, sir, I'm going to make a judgment call here.
$3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow.
That is not true. That report is totally discredited. Mitt Romney on that committee said it wasn't worth taxpayers' money, that report. It was written for political reasons.
You know, I'd like to talk about climate change.
So would I.
He made a couple of statements. The Green New Deal is $100 trillion.
That is not my plan.
That's
the Green
you want to rebuild every
is not my plan.
You want to rebuild every
If you knew anything about it,
he made a statement about the military. He said I said something about the military. He and his friends made it up, and then they went with it. I never said it.
Okay,
that is
what
not
he
true.
did is he said he called the military stupid bastards.
I did not say
that. He said stupid bastards.
Sir,
stop. I would never say that.
Play it.
I am extremely disgusted. One, I'm married to Jill. And two, I appointed Johnson to the academy. I want you to know that. Clap for that. And you are well done. Must be slow here, man.
Go ahead. Mr. Vice President. Answered his final question.
The final question is, I can't remember which of all was ranting.
I'm having a little trouble myself, but and about the economy and about this question of what it's going to cost.
The economy.
I mean, the Green New Deal and the idea of what your environmental change will do.
The Green New Deal will pay for itself as we move forward. We're not going to build plants that, in fact, are great polluting plants.
So do you support the Green New Deal?
Pardon me?
You support?
No, I don't support the Green New Deal.
You don't? Oh, well, that's a big statement.
I support
the radical left.
I support the Biden plan that I put forward.
Okay.
The Biden plan, which is different than what he calls the radical Green New Deal.
All right, gentlemen.
He's done very little. His trade deals are the same way. He talks about these great trade deals. You know, he talks about the art of the deal. China's perfected the art of the steal. We have a higher deficit with China now than we did before. We have the highest trade deficit with Mexico.
China ate your lunch. That ate 10%. China ate your lunch, Joe, and no wonder your son goes in and he takes out billions of dollars. Takes out billions of dollars to manage. He makes millions of dollars. And also, while we're at it, why is it, just out of curiosity, the mayor of Moscow's wife gave your son $3.5 million. What did he do to deserve it? What did he do with Burisma to deserve $183,000?
None of that is true.
Oh, really? He didn't get $3.5 million?
Mr. President, Mr. President, please.
Totally discredited. Totally discredited. And by the way...
Well, wait, he didn't get $3.5 million, Joe?
Mr. Vice
He got $3.5 million.
That is not true.
Oh, really?
Mr. President, it's an open discussion, please.
No,
it's a fact.
Well, you have raised an issue. Let the Vice President answer.
Discredited.
Did Burisma pay him $183,000 a month? With no experience in energy?
Mr. President,
my son did nothing wrong at Burisma.
I think he did.
Mr. President, let him answer.
He doesn't want to let me answer because he knows I have the truth.
We choose truth over facts.
His position has been totally, thoroughly discredited.
By who?
And
the media.
By everybody. Well, by the media, by our allies, by the World Bank, by everyone has discredited. Matter of fact, even the people who testified under oath.
So let me ask you this.
No, go ahead, Mr. I'm listening to you.
People
he got $3.5 million from Moscow.
He testified under oath in his administration, said, I did my job and I did it very well.
Oh, really?
I did it
I'd like to know who they are.
Well, I'll give you the list of the people who testified.
No, go ahead, sir.
Sure, you've already fired most of them because they did a good job.
Some people don't do a good job. With you,
wait a minute. You get the final word.
Well, it's hard to get any word in with this clown. Excuse me.
Hey, let me just tell you.
No. I'm Mr. President.
$3.5 million, Joe.
That is simply.
Why did he deserve $3.5 million from Moscow?
Look, here's the deal. We want to talk about families and ethics. I don't want to do that. I mean, his family we could talk about all night. His family's already...
My family lost a fortune by coming down and helping us with government.
And that's such a...
Mr. President,
every single one of them lost.
This is not about my family or his family. It's about your family. The American people. That's not true. It doesn't want to talk about what you need. You, the American people. It's about you. That's what we're talking about.
All right, that's the end of the segment. We're moving on.
It didn't take them.
We're moving on.
It didn't take them.
Vice President, no.
Can I be honest? It's a very important question. He stood up.
The answer to the question is no.
Ukraine.
No, sir.
With $1 billion of
that is absolutely not true. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting $1 billion. I said, you're not getting $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I looked at it, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired.
You're doing it. You're going to have...
Okay, true.
Gentlemen, I hate to raise my voice, but I see it seems to be, why shouldn't I be different than the two of you? So here's the deal.
Good point.
We have 6 segments. We have ended that segment. We're going to go to the next segment. In that segment, you each are going to have 2 uninterrupted moments. In those 2 uninterrupted minutes, Mr. President, you can say anything you want. I'm going to ask a question about race, but if you want to answer about something else, go ahead. Mr. President, 2 minutes.
So when I listened to Joe talking about a transition, there's been no transition from when I won. I won that election. And if you look at crooked Hillary Clinton, if you look at all of the different people, there was no transition because they came after me trying to do a coup. They came after me spying on my campaign. They started from the day I won and even before I won, from the day I came down the escalator with our First Lady. They were a disaster. They were a disgrace to our country. And we've caught them. We've caught them all. We've got it all on tape. We've caught them all. And by the way, you gave the idea for the Logan Act against General Flynn. You better take a look at that because we caught you in a sense. And President Obama was sitting in the office. He knew about it too. So don't tell me about a free transition. As far as the ballots are concerned, it's a disaster. A solicited ballot Okay, solicited is okay. You're soliciting, you're asking, they send it back, you send it back. I did that. If you have an unsolicited, they're sending millions of ballots all over the country. There's fraud. They found them in creeks. They found some with the name Trump, just happened to have the name Trump just the other day in a waste paper basket. They're being sent all over the place. They sent 2 in a Democrat area. They sent out 1,000 ballots. Everybody got 2 ballots. This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen. The other thing, it's nice on November 3rd, you're watching and you see who won the election. And I think we're going to do well because people are really happy with the job we've done. But you know what? We won't know. We might not know for months because these ballots are going to be all over. Take a look at what happened in Manhattan. Take a look at what happened in New Jersey. Take a look at what happened in Virginia and other places. They're not losing 2%, 1%, which, by the way, is too much. An election could be won or lost with that. They're losing 30 and 40%. It's a fraud, and it's a shame. And can you imagine where they say you have to have your ballot in by November 10th? November 10th. That means that's 7 days after the election, in theory, should have been announced.
Okay.
We have major states with that.
Sir,
all run by Democrats.
2 minutes is 2 minutes.
Well, for 3 years, dummies like Bill Kristol and many others told you that Russian agent, that's Donald Trump. He's working for Putin. He's sabotaging Ukraine to help Russia. But none of that came up at last night's debate, weirdly. Joe Biden didn't seem to want to talk about impeachment or the Mueller report. Strange. Those were history-changing moments, remember? In fact, the only person on stage who talked about Russia, really, was Donald Trump. Watch.
If you look at crooked Hillary Clinton, if you look at all of the different people, there was no transition because they came after me trying to do a coup. They came after me spying on my campaign. They started from the day I won and even before I won, from the day I came down the escalator with our First Lady. They were a disaster. They were a disgrace to our country. And we've caught them. We've caught them all. We've got it all on tape. We've caught them all. And by the way, you gave the idea for the Logan Act against General Flynn. You better take a look at that because we caught you in a sense. And President Obama was sitting in the office. He knew about it too. So don't tell me about a free transition.
Well, I don't know if you could tell from the clip we just played you, but just hours before last night's debate, we learned from declassified documents that Russian intelligence determined during the last cycle, 2016, that it was Hillary Clinton who came up with and was pushing the narrative about Trump and Russia to distract from her email scandal. This was so worrisome to American intelligence officials that they forwarded an investigative referral about Clinton's plan to the FBI. But today, Jim Comey, who ran the FBI, testified he doesn't even remember that referral. How does that make sense? And why did Jim Comey then rely on the Steele dossier, which was based on claims from a subsource linked to Russian intelligence to investigate the Trump campaign? If your head is throbbing, there's a reason for that. Sean Davis has gone through all the details for years now. He's the co-founder of the Federalist. We're happy to have him on tonight to sort them out. Hey, Sean.
Thank you for having me.
So what did we learn from Comey today?
Well, it was actually a very big week as far as Russiagate news. Yesterday we learned that it wasn't the Trump campaign who had colluded with Russian spies to interfere in the 2016 election. We learned that it was actually Hillary Clinton's campaign. The Russians knew what she was doing. The FBI knew that they knew. James Comey was even told through that investigative referral what was going on, that a Russian spy had infiltrated Christopher Steele's network and seeded his dossier with false information. And Comey today claimed that he didn't know a thing about it, which sure is curious given that the guy was running this thing from the beginning for the FBI.
So, I mean, it's just further evidence, as if we needed it, that whatever they're accusing you of doing is precisely to the letter what they are doing themselves. I mean, irony doesn't describe it.
You're exactly right. And it's even bigger than that. This isn't just a scandal about Democrat projection. This is a scandal about what was a coup planned against the incoming administration at the highest levels. And I can report here tonight that these declassifications that have come out those weren't easy to get out, and there's in fact far more waiting to get out. Unfortunately, those releases and declassifications, according to multiple sources I've talked to, are being blocked by CIA Director Gina Haspel, who herself was the main link between Washington and London as the London station chief for John Brennan's CIA during the 2016 election. Recall, it was London where Christopher Steele was doing all this work. And I'm told that it is Gina Haspel personally who's blocking continued declassification of these documents that will show the American people the truth of what actually happened.
Why are we putting up with this? I mean, they're still holding documents from the Kennedy assassination, the Warren Commission documents. We still don't know everything there. Why is that 55 years later, 7 years later? They're blocking the release of so many documents. Why doesn't somebody, anyone in power could do this, stand up and say, no, these are going public now?
That's a great question. I think one reason is that so many of the people blocking these documents are likely implicated by them. You have these career bureaucrats whose careers may be destroyed by the facts that are within them. And I think at this point, we need the President, Donald Trump, to step in and say no more obstruction, no more blocking. We need transparency, and the American people need to hear the truth. And that means declassifying everything, letting everyone see everything about what happened so we can decide for ourselves before we vote in this election who we actually want in charge of these agencies.
Right. I mean, you can literally shoot a cop and get charged with assault, but if you're Julian Assange and you effectively declassify lots of documents, put them into public view, they want to kill you. It just tells you a lot about their priorities, doesn't it? Sean, great to see you.
Thank you.
You know, Katie, America knew what they were getting in Donald Trump in 2016. They knew he was not a creature of the swamp. They knew he was an iconoclast. They knew he was a disruptor. They knew he was a fighter, and they knew he wouldn't back down. Now the question is, are they going to buy this feigned, phony, selective outrage, or do you think he gets reelected? How do you see it going down?
Well, I think his re-election chances should not be downplayed, especially given he was in Minnesota.
I don't mean to interrupt you so quick. Stay right there. We're going to get back to you.
No problem.
Apparently the president is talking about the debate. Let's dip in and see what he says.
Accountable for his 47 years of lies, 47 years of betrayal, and 47 years of failure. I held Joe accountable for shipping your jobs and dreams abroad, and for bowing to the violent mob at home. Can you imagine these people, the way they take over these Democrat cities? I don't even believe it. The whole nation saw the truth. Did you see last night? Name one. I said, Sleepy Joe, name one law enforcement group that supports you. And then Chris Wallace says, don't do that. That's not. Can you believe this guy? I was debating two people last night. Debating two people last night. Joe Biden is too weak to lead this country. You know, Biden lost badly when his supporters are saying he should cancel the rest of the debates. Now I understand he's canceling the debates. Let's see what happens. I think that's not going to be a good move for him. I don't think that's going to be a good move. I don't think television with those ratings are never going to let him cancel. You don't know television like that. What are they going to do? You know, someday we're not going to be doing this anymore. What are they going to do without Trump? What are they going to do? Those poor people. Look at all of them. Whoa! That's a lot of people. What are they going to do? What are they going to do when in 8, 12, maybe 16 years, I said, let's hang it up. Let's hang it up. 16 more years. But what he's doing is what you do when you lose. So let's see what he does. I don't think he's going to get out. And I've got news for Joe. If you ever became president, you have to deal with some of the toughest people in the world. And Chris Wallace is very, very easy by comparison, I will tell you. I know I'm wrong. I know I'm wrong. Liberal media is upset that I took the fight to Biden and exposed his very dangerous agenda. Oh, there's a beauty. Here we go. Here we go. There's another beauty out there. Go home to mom. Go home.
And the other thing is, Joe Biden was also exposed for not being the nice guy that everyone in the media has been saying he is for the past 2 years.
Yeah, he looked kind of cranky last night.
Exposed him as someone who has a temper and who isn't as presidential as maybe they've been presenting him as.
Yeah, it looks like it was past his nappy time. All right, thank you all. Let's dip back into the president talking about the new Green Deal and the Supreme Court.
The wife of the former mayor of Moscow, and they talk about me with Russia. I have nothing to do with Russia. And took out $1.5 billion from China. He makes millions of dollars a year, right? Then he got the $183, right? $183,000 a month. Would anybody like that job? You don't have a job. You're not employed. You get thrown out of the military for unfortunate reasons. Your father becomes vice president, and you get hired for $183,000 a month with, I think, a $3 million upfront payment. I think they could have had him for less. Would anybody take that job? And he knows nothing about energy. What do you know about energy? Well, that's not my thing. Oh, that's okay. I mean, could you imagine if I did it? How about when Sleepy Joe said, you're not getting the $1 billion unless you get rid of the prosecutor. When you get rid of the prosecutor, we'll send you the money.
I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting $1 billion. I said, you're not getting $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here, and I think it was, 6 hours? I looked, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired.
They got rid of the prosecutor. He said, now the money comes. I mean, can you imagine if I said that? Unbelievable. And the press doesn't want to talk about it. And Chris Wallace said, well, we don't want to discuss that. Oh, really, Chris? It's so sad. I'll tell you, it's so hypocritical, so sad. This is a matter of national security and economic security. The Bidens got rich while American workers got robbed. How can you deal with China if you take out $3.5 billion and make all sorts of money? How can you do it? A critical issue in this election, you saw what I did with China. Billions and billions a year they pay us. I gave a lot of it to the farmers, $28 billion. A critical issue because they were targeted by China. A critical issue in this election is the future of the Minnesota Iron Range. You know that. That's why I'm here. This was just supposed to be a little get-together, and then they said, sir, we got thousands of people want to show up. I don't know how many are involved, and this was supposed to be an Iron Range get-together, but it turns out big. You know, Biden has 20, 30 people. He's got those circles. Today he had a little bit more, like 30 or 40, but they were too close together. I sent him a note, Joe. They were too close, 34 people right next to each other. And yet he complained about our rally, right? Our rallies. Now it's an honor that so many people showed up, because this was going to be a little quickie just to say congratulations, because Obama closed the Iron Range and I opened it.
When the president gets back to more of the issues in the debate last night, and Joe Biden and the Supreme Court, will go to that. But we have important news tonight on Mr. Super Patriot himself, Mr. Higher Honor, Jim Comey. Today he appeared in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Earlier today, he doubled down on the deep state and their lies about the Steele dossier, actually trying to claim he was hardly even involved in the Russia investigation at all. He signed 3 of the 4 FISA warrants, which were based on the dirty Russian dossier that we now know Christopher Steele used, a Russian operative that the FBI had known about for 10 years. Here's some of his garbage from earlier today.
How is it possible that the system gathers so much exculpatory information, this internet room recording the CIA, that the actual interview of the subsource disavows the reliability document, that the actual subsource was a suspected Russian spy? How could all that happen and not get up to you, the director of the FBI, of one of the most important investigations in the history of the FBI? How is that possible?
I can only speculate because it didn't.
Mr. Comey, with all due respect, you don't seem to know anything about an investigation that you ran.
This investigation of the president was corrupt. The FBI and the Department of Justice were politicized and weaponized. And in my opinion, there are only 2 possibilities. That you were deliberately corrupt or woefully incompetent. And I don't believe you were incompetent.
I agree with Senator Cruz. Now even worse is Comey's apparent selective amnesia all throughout today's questioning, because the disgraced FBI director repeatedly claimed he couldn't remember any specifics about Crossfire Hurricane or the dirty dossier or the FISA process at all. Now, for example, Comey couldn't say whether the dossier was essential to getting the warrant to spy on Carter Page and the president. Despite Comey himself, he signed 3 of those FISA applications. Now, the word at the top of a FISA application is verified, right at the top. He signed 3 of the 4. He put his signatures on something that he said and he testified to was verified before a court. And by the way, Comey couldn't even say if he was briefed at all about the red flags as it relates to Steele's work with his primary subsource, known to the FBI for over a decade as a Russian-connected spy.
These people are sick.
And he said he didn't know whether Page was a source for the CIA. And despite undeniable evidence to the contrary, he couldn't answer even the most basic questions about whether FBI lawyer Kevin Kleinsmith altered evidence which Kleinsmith already pled guilty to. And he couldn't even say who prepared the applications to begin with. He doesn't even remember being briefed about by Bruce Orr. He doesn't remember anything in terms of the interviews about the subsource. Well, that happened in January of 2017. Here's a whole small sample of Mr. Higher Honor, let's say, going low. Take a look.
In October, when the warrant was submitted, the application was submitted, what effort had been made to verify the dossier in October?
I don't know specifically.
So in October, it's clear, Mr. Comey, there was no effort to verify the dossier before it was given to the court. Do you agree with that?
I don't know the answer. I don't remember learning anything additional about Steele's sources. Not that I recall, no. I don't remember Bruce Orr ever briefing me.
Were you aware that in December 2016, the CIA tells the FBI they characterized the dossier as internet rumor?
I don't recall being informed of that.
By the way, we're about to cross-check every other past statement Mr. Comey's ever made. And does Comey actually expect anybody to believe that the biggest abuse of power corruption scandal happened inside his FBI and he knew nothing about this the entire time, but he remembered every single second that he ever spent as it relates to Donald Trump, that he was the guy that pushed, the dirty dossier, the now infamous intelligence community assessment that was released in early 2017, and Comey, who is the one who briefed President Trump that it was salacious and unverified, even though in October, months earlier, he claimed and signed a document that said it was verified. So let's be clear. Nothing he said today exonerates him. And by the way, just like Rod Rosenstein and Sally Yates, knowing what they now know now, they wouldn't have signed the FISA warrant. Well, Jim Comey today said, well, knowing what I know now, I wouldn't have signed the 3 FISA applications. And by the way, that's not all, because tonight we're even learning more about the extent of the deep state's cover-up. Because according to a new declassification from the Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe, at the request of Lindsey Graham, Barack Obama himself was briefed by then CIA Director Brennan about a Russian intelligence analysis claiming that Hillary Clinton was drumming up the Russia collusion hoax in an attempt to vilify then candidate Trump to distract from, those subpoenaed emails she was deleting and the use of bleach bit and the use of hammers and the removal of SIM cards. Now, the deep state is taking any responsibility? They're going to take it for that misconduct? Or they're doing the opposite? Just look at, for example, Mueller pitbull Andrew Weissman telling CBS that he wiped bones from the special counsel's office. A big deal because everything was backed up. Really, Andrew? Well, why were all the phones, put in there in the first place? Anyway, also tonight, some Democrats are still playing petty politics by refusing to meet with Supreme Court nominee Judge Amy Coney Barrett, including Chucky Schumer, as she's meeting with the decent senators on Capitol Hill. And by the way, hearings are set to start October 12th, putting the confirmation vote at the end of the month, and there's not really anything Democrats can do to stop it. Here with the reaction, Senator Lindsey Graham. He's with the Senate Judiciary Committee. So now you have Sally Yates, Rod Rosenstein, and Jim Comey, who remembers nothing about the FISA application, the dossier, the subsource, but he remembers every second with Donald Trump. Do you believe him? Because I do not.
Well, all I can say is he has a convenient memory. He remembers what is damning to Trump, and when something is helpful to Trump, it's like Sergeant Schultz was in charge of the FBI. I see nothing, I hear nothing, I know nothing.
These people are sick.
It's hard to believe that the director of the FBI, in charge of an investigation of a sitting president, wasn't told, oh, by the way, the subsource who prepared the dossier, we think it's a Russian agent back to 2009. It's hard to believe they didn't tell the director of the FBI. The subsource tells us that the dossier is Bartok, not reliable, take it with a grain of salt. It's hard to believe that they don't tell the FBI director the CIA has warned us that the dossier prepared by Christopher Steele and a suspected Russian spy is all internet rumor. So here's Comey's problem. If one person can come forward and say, I briefed the director about the problems with the subsource, I told the director that the CIA was worried about the reliability of the dossier, then he is in big time trouble.
Okay, do you believe him that he signed something where he claims it's verified and that he had no idea that if it was verified? Wouldn't that be dereliction of duty? Doesn't that mean he still committed fraud on a court? And when he did find out the truth, doesn't the law require that he go back to that court and inform that court he signed something that wasn't verified?
Yeah, he's yet to tell the court I apologize. But what he said today was pretty stunning. The director of the FBI, in charge of one of the most high-profile investigations in the history of the FBI, said if he knew then what he knows now, he would not sign the warrant application against Carter Page. This is a big day for Carter Page. I think he's going to become a rich man and deserves to be compensated. So what happened here is that the Democratic Party hired a foreign agent, Christopher Steele, who enlisted a suspected Russian spy to create a dossier that was a bunch of garbage, Russian disinformation, and the FBI bought it hook, line, and sinker, used it 4 times against an American citizen, a Trump campaign person, to get a warrant. If that doesn't bother America, then something's wrong. To my Democratic colleagues, if the shoe were on the other foot, you'd be burning the place down. So
I want every single person
here.
that warned about that dossier,
right,
to now say, what did they tell Comey? When did they tell Comey? I think you need to cross-check everything Comey has said prior. I would expect you'll see inconsistencies. I got to get back to the rally. Senator Lindsey Graham, what will be the date of the vote over Amy Coney Barrett?
We're going to report her out of the committee on October the 22nd. The Democrats are going crazy, raising money against the president, myself, LindseyGraham.com. They're loading me up because I'm chairman of the Judiciary Committee, trying to get to the bottom of what happened with the Russian collusion and get Amy Barrett through. LindseyGraham.com. Help us all. We need your help. All right.
It is true. The reason I got in the race is when those people, close your eyes, remember what those people look like coming out of the fields carrying torches, their veins bulging, just spewing anti-Semitic bile, and accompanied by the Ku Klux Klan. A young woman got killed, and they asked the president what he thought. He said there were very fine people on both sides. No president has ever said anything like that.
It is
now, second,
sir.
After repeatedly claiming the president has refused to denounce white supremacy. Okay, let's look at the videotape, as my good friend Warner Wolf would say. Let's go to the videotape, the tape the left doesn't want you to see.
Have you ever heard this president say one negative thing about white supremacists? Have you ever heard it?
I totally disavow the Ku Klux Klan. I totally disavow David Duke.
I got back in this race because of what happened in Charlottesville. People coming out of the woods carrying torches, their veins bulging. Close your eyes and remember what you saw. And a young woman gets killed resisting the hate and violence, and the president gets asked to comment on it. What's he say? He says they're very fine people on both sides.
And you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. And I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally.
You wouldn't even condemn David Duke, for God's sake.
I've rejected David Duke. I've rejected the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan. From the time I'm 5 years old, I rejected them.
Joe Biden has been lying all day about this. The mob and the media lying all day. Syndicated radio talk shows, Larry Elder, former NFL player Herschel Walker. Herschel, your take. And they just lie. They just repeat the lie again, doesn't matter. Here's the tape. They're lying.
Well, they're trying to play every card in their deck, and racist is like the ace of spades, they think. But I hate to tell them it's not, because look at Herschel Walker. Donald Trump is not a racist. And you'll think about this. In the Democratic debate, he had his own running mate. They almost called him a racist. So now she's running on his ticket. So think about that.
Yeah, all right, Larry, you were laughing. I mean, there's more tape if you want me to keep going. I can, he said it many more times, but I guess they have selective amnesia like Joe. Or like Comey, rather.
Sean, I've got a documentary called Uncle Tom, which, by the way, debuted yesterday on iTunes and is #1. And I address this nonsense that Donald Trump is a racist in the documentary. And forget about Elder. You have two hosts over at CNN, Jake Tapper and Michael McConish, both of whom said after Donald Trump made the comment and after they were wrong, they later on looked at it and they said that we were wrong. Donald Trump was not referring to neo-Nazis or white nationalists. He was referring to very fine people on both sides of the debate as to whether or not there should be a Confederate monument in the public square.
Now, elsewhere in those remarks, the president did condemn neo-Nazis and white supremacists. So he's not saying that the neo-Nazis and white supremacists are very fine people.
And finally, this whole notion, Sean, that Donald Trump ran sending a dog whistle to racists. There is a former host on MSNBC, Chris Matthews, who once said, and he was the campaign manager for Tip O'Neill. He was his press secretary. He wrote a book called Hardball about campaigns. He said white people would not vote for somebody if they thought they were racist. Why then would it be in Donald Trump's best interest to be perceived as a racist when Chris Matthews says anybody white would not pull the lever for somebody who's a racist? Right. So the whole thing is BS. It's unfair. He never said it. And if Donald Trump is such a racist, Sean, why do you have to lie about Exhibit A? There ought to be easy to find things that Donald Trump has said that's racist. Why do you have to lie about it?
To anyone who acted criminally in this weekend's racist violence, you will be held fully accountable. Justice will be delivered. As I said on Saturday, we condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence. It has no place in America. And as I have said many times before, no matter the color of our skin, we all live under the same laws. We all salute the same great flag. And we are all made by the same Almighty God. We must love each other, show affection for each other, and unite together in condemnation of hatred, bigotry, and violence. We must rediscover the bonds of love and loyalty that bring us together as Americans. Racism is evil, and those who cause violence in its name are criminals and thugs, including the KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other hate groups that are repugnant to everything we hold dear as Americans. We are a nation founded on the truth that all of us are created equal. We are equal in the eyes of our Creator. We are equal under the law, and we are equal under our Constitution. Those who spread violence in the name of bigotry strike at the very core of America. 2 days ago, a young American woman, Heather Heyer, was tragically killed. Her death fills us with grief, and we send her family our thoughts, our prayers, and our love. We also mourn the 2 Virginia state troopers who died in service to their community, their Commonwealth, and their country. Troopers Jay Cullen and Burke Bates exemplify the very best of America, and our hearts go out to their families, their friends, and every member of American law enforcement. These 3 fallen Americans embody the goodness and decency of our nation. In times such as these, America has always shown its true character, responding to hate with love, division with unity, and violence with an unwavering resolve for justice. As a candidate, I promise to restore law and order to our country, and our federal law enforcement agencies are following through on that pledge.
President of the United States is on our Newsmaker line. Mr. President, thank you for being with us. I know you've been busy all night. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you.
And
Mark is so right. Look, Mark is so right. You can't say it any better than that. I go through this every year, every time somebody says something, and you look at their records are horrible. It's fake news. You look at, I watched John Roberts screaming at Haley, and Kaylee was so wonderful the way she handled it, but I watched him screaming, and his wife, John's wife, was saying, "What are you doing?" Because yesterday I made a statement that was, according to most, it was a perfect statement, but I've said it so many times even beyond that. And no matter what you say, it'll just keep going. And, Biden did the 1994 crime bill. That's the super predator bill. So he did the super predator bill, and when you look at it, but Mark Levin is right. He's 100% right. No matter what you say, it won't make any difference. And I have to say, I've said it many times, and let me be clear again, I condemn the KKK. I condemn all white supremacists. I condemn the Proud Boys. I don't know much about the Proud Boys, almost nothing, but I condemn that. But he should condemn also Antifa. Antifa is a horrible group of people. They kill people. What they do to people, and they're causing insurrection, they're causing riots. He doesn't want to do that, but the press doesn't go after him, and that's a really bad group of people. But I condemn them, and if I say it 100 times, it won't be enough because it's fake news.
Mr. President, I played earlier. Joe Biden is out there all day today saying you've never condemned white nationalists, you just did. You've never condemned segregation as you just did. You've never condemned the KKK, you have. And you've never condemned David Duke. You are condemning all of them tonight, on record tonight, sir. Is that correct?
Yes, but I've condemned them in the past. For years I've condemned people, and I think almost everything that you mentioned. What hasn't been condemned is his crime bill where he talks about super predators. And that was the worst thing that ever happened to the black community, for the young men and women of the black community. That was Sleepy Joe Biden.
Mark Levin went through, and we've done it on this program too, an exhaustive examination of Joe Biden and his history on racial issues. He did refer to Robert Byrd, the former Klansman, as my friend and mentor. That's the man that filibustered the Civil Rights Act. That's the man against the Voting Rights Act. And Robert Byrd was the man that Joe Biden partnered with to stop busing and integration of schools because, I'll use the words of Joe, he didn't want his kids going to schools that were a racial jungle.
I think one of the best changes that each of us could entertain is looking toward the future instead of constantly in the rearview mirror. One of the fears that I hear from Russians is that somehow the United States wants Russia to be weak. That could not be farther from the truth. Our goal is to help strengthen Russia. We see Russia with the strong culture, with the incredible intellectual capital that Russia has, as a leader in the 21st century. And we sometimes feel like we believe more in your future than sometimes Russians do.
How dare you?
How dare you?
Fire up a bowl and accept your fate.
By the way, some news broke earlier this evening. Hope Hicks, who's worked for you a long time, has tested positive for coronavirus. Obviously, our prayers are with her. And by the way, everybody that is, as you call, gotten this invisible enemy, do you have any update on her? And where are we with therapeutics? Where are we with the vaccine?
So she did test positive. I just heard about this. She tested positive. She's a hard worker, a lot of masks. She wears masks a lot, but she tested positive. And I just went out with a test. I'll see what, because we spend a lot of time, and the First Lady just went out with a test also. So whether we quarantine or whether we have it, I don't know. It's very hard when you're with soldiers, when you're with airmen, when you're with Marines, and the police officers. I'm with them so much. And when they come over to you, it's very hard to say, stay back, stay back. It's a tough kind of a situation. It's a terrible thing. So I just went for a test, and we'll see what happens. I mean, who knows? But you know her very well. She's fantastic, and she's done a great job. But it's very, very hard when you are with people from the military or from law enforcement, and they come over to you, and they want to hug you, and they want to kiss you because we really have done a good job for them. And you get close, and things happen. I was surprised to hear with Hope, but she's a very warm person with them, and she knows there's a risk, but she's young. And I just went out for a test. They just do it. It'll come back later, I guess. And the First Lady also, because we spend a lot of time with Hope and others. So we'll see what happens. But
where are we with therapeutics and with the vaccine?
You have to treat our people great. You can't just say, stay away, stay away. They come up to you. There's such love with what we've done for them, and there's such love, and you have to treat our people great. I think the vaccines are coming quickly. I do think it's somewhat political. They'd like to do it, even the drug companies, they've dealt with these people a long time. I think they'd like to do it after the election, even if it's a couple of days. But the fact is, the vaccines are coming out. The therapeutics are coming out, and they're coming out really good. Regeneron and other companies are great. Eli Lilly. So, we'll have to see. The survival rate is so much better now than it was. You've seen those numbers, I guess 95% or something like that better. So we'll have to see. I mean, I'll get my test back either tonight or tomorrow morning, but I spent a lot of time with Hope, and so does the First Lady. And she's tremendous. I was a little surprised, but she's a very warm person. She has a hard time when soldiers and law enforcement comes up to her. She wants to treat them great, not say, stay away, I can't get near you. It's a very, very tough disease.
Good morning. We are back with the Fox News alert. President Trump and the First Lady in quarantine at the White House after confirming they have contracted the coronavirus.
Fox News overnight anchor Ashley Strohmeyer has been covering the very latest developments all night long. She joins us now. Ashley.
Hey guys, good morning. Yeah, we've talked to several people, doctors. We've talked to our correspondents who cover the White House in D.C. extensively overnight about protocols that go into place for the masks with COVID, with social distancing, things like that. A lot of things were brought up. I also do want to mention briefly, though, we did hear from the president himself on Sean Hannity's show last night around 9:30 Eastern time, and he seemed fine. He said they were just waiting on the test results, but he seemed to be in good spirits. spirits. He did not sound sick. I know that's something. There was no coughing or anything like that. But they did test positive. That news came out just a little before 1 o'clock. Now, we did talk to Dr. Ronnie Jackson. He's a former White House physician this morning. And obviously a question that a lot of people want to know is, what's the protocol for something like this? Or is this just kind of play it by ear and they make those decisions as they go? This is what he had to say.
There's always contingency plans in place for what happens if the president gets sick, and people are obviously thinking about that. I think that he's probably going to be fine. I suspect and I hope that this is one of those cases where the president and the first lady tests positive and they're completely asymptomatic.
And, you know, guys, we spoke to many doctors, 6 or 7 doctors last night, and that was kind of the general idea of where the president stands with not being symptomatic, yet Hope Hicks, who did test positive and is showing symptoms, they were saying that they expected, by the doctors I'm saying that, they expect the president to stay asymptomatic. They said they would be shocked if he didn't, just by way of where the timestamp is with Hope Hicks and her symptoms and the president coming in contact with her, as you can see on that video. She also, I do want to point out, has a mask on, and according to Kevin Corkin, the people who report from the White House and on the compound, they said that the social distancing rules do go into effect there, and it is a pretty strict protocol to get in. Listen to what Kevin had to say.
We're tested when we go into the White House. We're tested when we are around the president. So it's a little bit surprising, I would say it from that perspective. However, they've been on the road a little bit more. And so obviously there's a more, unfortunately, there's more risk of exposure.
And as far as being on the road, on the debate stage on Tuesday, he was feet away from VP Joe Biden. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out the rest of the day. As you guys have been saying all morning long, what's going to happen with that. It's also important to note that there was a lot of talk about the masks and mask wearing, as Hope Hicks, we've said overnight, all night long, she was very adamant about wearing a mask. The president, even on stage at the debate on Tuesday, pulled the mask out of his pocket, his suit pocket, and said, you know, I have no problem wearing the mask. I do wear it whenever I feel it is needed, guys. So the mask conversation was something that was brought up a lot overnight.
Ashley Strohmeyer, thank you for being on top of this literally all night long. We appreciate it.
No problem.
Ivanka and Jared tested negative earlier. I tested negative earlier as well, since we were in proximity with him on Tuesday. So the rest of the family seems to be holding up great, which is also good news. And we look forward to sort of letting that incubation period go through and also getting back to work.
So this has been floating around on a pretty wide scale since March, and your dad has been pretty much out there since March. He hasn't been hiding anywhere. He's been talking to people, a lot of people, and doing a lot of big rallies. Here he gets it a month before the election. It's a little weird. How did he get it, do you think?
You know what? I don't know. The reality is, the protocols around my father are pretty amazing. Like, Kimberly got it earlier this summer, and the only reason we knew she actually had it was because we were getting in proximity to him. So literally anyone who's in that close proximity is tested each and every day. If he can get it, probably anyone can, for better or worse. But, I know they took really extensive protocols, and it didn't seem to matter. So I'm not sure where that would have come from or who. But, the reality is this is something that, can spread. Yep.
The timing of all this is very bright. I'm sure, nothing to it, but it's pretty weird. Don Jr., great to see you.
I'm not going to get conspiratorial on that one, but yeah,
I'm not a conspiracy guy in the side. It's just noting
it's a little strange. But anyway, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.